Hello and welcome to Agency Office Hours. I'm Agency Advisor Karl Sakas. This is Q&A about helping you grow your agency more smoothly and more profitably for September 2023. Thanks for joining us. Here's a preview of the questions that I will be answering over the coming hour or so. Today focuses all about growing your revenue. It's an especially timely topic, but it's also a cyclical topic, something that agencies tend to run into over time, and now is one of those times. We'll also talk about taking time off, which might seem paradoxical. Can you afford to do that right now? But it's all the more important to help you recharge as things recover. I'll share a new way to get my help on a one-on-one basis without having to make an enormous commitment. And we'll talk about pricing models, including some options to make sure your agency's pricing approach is profitable. If you're doing one of the Q&As today, be ready. And if you'd like to ask a question at a future event, we're meeting every second Tuesday in this time slot. We're on the video. If you're watching the video afterwards, you can submit your question when you RSVP, and we'll let you know ahead of time if you're on the list. And of course, you're also welcome to just listen in and hear what's going on. If you are joining us live today, feel free to share in chat where you're joining us from, what's your agency, and as we go, would love to hear your reactions to some of the tips you are hearing, as well as any additional resources you recommend. We'll also share some tips in chat with links to articles that I've written and other resources to help you out. And if you're watching live, you'll get the recording within 24 hours via email, ahead of anyone else. Our first question today is about revenue growth. Specifically, what do you do when your pipeline is slow? We've been covering that over the past several months. And I looked back, and there was a conversation that I had back in August of 2020 about revenue growth. This was as the COVID pandemic was starting, that is especially timely for today as well. So I'm going to play the video of that, one of the over 300 video segments available at sakasandcompany.com free of charge, because that advice still very timely. If you can hear, if you're joining live and you can hear things playing, if you could write yes in chat, that'll help confirm that things are cooperating. All right, here we go. Bringing that up. All right. I think some of the discussions we'll have about biz dev today and revenue models should be especially helpful as you're sorting out how to get that moving. So, Ana Laura, you were up first. If you could introduce yourself, repeat your question and then we can dive in.
Great. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm super happy to share at this time with you all. I'm based in Portugal. I'm not from Portugal. I was born in Argentina, but moved to Europe a while ago. And I started my agency, I'll say like a year ago, officially. So everything is quite new. I moved from corporate to freelancing to building the agency, and my background is in marketing. So the first big struggle, as most of you probably have this year, is selling. But I guess it's interesting because I never really had an issue with that. I always have, a good amount of clients, and like if there's not an opportunity happening, there's another one developing. So I see that the way I set it up really works. The issue is that I never sold anything in my life. So I guess the issue for me is like understanding how LinkedIn is there, and there's a lot of different options, but I was wondering if anyone here has any, and you, Karl, of course, recommendations on how to kind of like get to people that are outside of that network and expand the sales opportunities. because the great thing is that it works without doing a lot in that sense. But there's only like a limited number of people that will ever need your help from your own network. So yeah, that's my question.
For sure. Well, thank you. And for everyone who's listening, if you have some ideas, please share them on chat. Would love to hear what you're doing to expand your own business development beyond your network. So I would say this is a common problem that agencies run into. Usually in the first few years of business, like for a long time, your network is good and finding business, but as you grow, it can be hard to sustain that. So the question is, then what? Some of that will depend on your target market. For instance, are you focused on small businesses? Are you focused on enterprise? Are you focused on a particular niche? In your case, who is your ideal client? Sort of what's the profile of that target person?
Ideal client is, I'll say, more like enterprise, and it's for mostly like consulting on marketing automation and mostly pilot. So it's a very specific market. Yeah, it's ideally that, which is bigger deals, longer term, and yeah, that's the ideal one.
Got it. And with enterprise and sort of longer term marketing automation, of course, the nice thing about marketing automation is it lends itself to ongoing retainer deals. And we'll talk a bit more in a bit about how do you raise prices for your retainers. And is there a particular industry focus within enterprise, or it's sort of all large corporations?
It's a mix, but I'll say B2B, education, and yeah, anything like the tech or B2B and education. That's the main, yeah.
So two pieces. One, looking at content marketing and thought leadership in particular, what can you do to get in front of people in your target market who are focused there? For instance, within education, what are the decision makers in education reading? For instance, in the CMO group I run, the chief marketing officers, brand side, I'm regularly hearing examples about, articles from Harvard Business Review. Now, HBR is difficult to get into, that's not an easy PR result. But, there'll be other things like CMO.com, which is we've now owned by Adobe, and others, sort of smaller publications where that's one of those, you get the one article and you lever up. And of course, your own blog can be helpful too. To what extent, sort of initial piece, to what extent are you using thought leadership in your self-marketing?
That's a very good question. I am, and I'm actually now in the process of hiring someone that can help me to write more content because I don't have enough time to.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So having a person that can help me there, because like I can have a blog and everything, but if it's not SEO optimized, or it's like very hard to get people to land there. But yeah, it's kind of like, it's interesting. If doing marketing for yourself, it's very funny, but I met a lot of people that are like on a similar situation where you're like, oh, you're working a lot and your own marketing is not even great. In that sense, when it comes to content and everything. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah. The challenge, of course, is, the shoemaker's kids or the cobbler's kids. Yeah. It's a common challenge, but you still need business. You still need to find those clients. So bringing someone in is helpful, because then they can focus on creating content. One of my shortcuts for content, I shared this in my email newsletter recently, is around answering questions from real people. I mean, like what we're doing right now, right? My plan will be, of course, to get things transcribed and turn some of our conversations today into future blog posts. And so, looking for opportunities to answer questions from real people is really helpful on getting content done faster. For people who are more of you'd rather talk about it than write about it, then, well, in that case, get it transcribed. Rev.com, I'm a fan of that. Either their higher end, kind of high accuracy transcription. They also have an automated transcription that is not as accurate, but it's faster and cheaper. That can be a good match if you're going to need to do some editing anyway. So rev.com is an option there. And there are others too, but that's been pretty reliable. That's an option. Also, if you need content, but you don't like writing at all, but you like talking, well, video can be a good match. If you don't enjoy writing, don't create a content strategy that relies on writing. The second thing that's coming to mind is around leveraging your network in a somewhat different way. So something I'll often recommend to my executive coaching clients is to do the thing where you download your contacts from LinkedIn and do a review and take a look, like, where is everyone these days? Because you probably will find from your past corporate experience, you may have some coworkers from before who are, now working in other businesses, or, have some sort of, new role that might be, they might need your help. There's a joke that when a new CEO starts, and that could apply to a CMO or otherwise too, a new person starts, they have 3 jobs to do. They need to hire someone, fire someone, and rearrange the furniture. That is, they need to show their boss that, they're getting things done, they're getting results. And sometimes, the downside is your agency is the one that gets fired. That doesn't always work out, or it doesn't always work out well. Sometimes, though, you're the one who gets hired. That can come in handy. So let me share, I'm sharing on chat, this is the export connections from LinkedIn tutorial, where they explain how you can export the contacts. If you haven't done it lately, even if you have done it, a year or two ago, it's worth doing it now, because you can see, where are people these days. There is a twist. It used to be that you would get everyone's email addresses. They've shared it due to new privacy settings, so you don't always get everyone's email address, but you can at least get a reminder of the people, where they are, and things like that. And that may let you be a bit more targeted in your follow-up. So technically that's networking rather than something totally new, but that can come in handy. And Heather, to your question, that is a free thing within LinkedIn. Although I'm sure LinkedIn would love to charge for exporting your own contacts. Currently free. They have, again, cut back on the level of detail you get on each person. So from what we've shared, any follow-up questions on any of that? And again, for anyone listening on chat, chime in on what's worked well for you on expanding your lead gen beyond your network. Anna Laura, follow-up questions on that?
I was just thinking, I think that the content one is, the content piece is definitely important. I think that's kind of like more like a long-term thing that I'm working on and everything. I won't see immediate results for sure. I think that using the existing network bit and downloading all the information I have on LinkedIn might help a lot. The one thing that I've heard lately, and I don't know if you recommend or you used it before, which I don't know if I will ever try that route, but I don't know if you have any thoughts, which is reaching out to people directly on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people now use automation for that, which I don't know if it works or not. But I'm a bit hesitant because I don't know if I want to reach out to people that I don't know and are potential clients saying, how you struggle with this or that. To me, honestly, sometimes it's a bit too much because we all get these messages and I'm like, oh, I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to know if you have any thoughts on that.
I know people do use the LinkedIn outreach technique, where it's either, looking at profiles or sending connection requests or what have you. To me, it feels somewhat inauthentic, but my sense is it does work. But I mean, like you, I have the same concern of getting a very generic connection request or even none. You're kind of no details to it, and I'm wondering what's going on. If it's someone who seems like they might benefit from my help, if they reach out to me, I'll ask, something along the lines of, thanks for reaching out. Did you need help with something in your agency now, or were you connecting in general? That's more on the inbound side of things.
Um, the outbound side, I don't know that there is that authenticity bit. It seems like there's a bit of a disconnect. I'm curious for everyone listening listening live, if you want to share in chat, what's your experience either on the receiving side or the sending side of the kind of LinkedIn connection deal? I would love if you share.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in that sense. Like the outbound one is, to me, I don't know. I feel like a bit. I don't know if it's because it's my own name there, and I feel like I'm spamming people in a way. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm nothing against it. I might need to just try it. But yeah, that's the only thing that I've got. Literally, like so many messages from people lately offering those services that I'm like, I don't know if I'm missing out here. But yeah.
Yeah, a client received an acquisition offer via cold email, or it wasn't the initial offer. The offer would, is would you like to chat further? And he got to the point, back and forth where eventually he was thinking, okay, it's time to sign a non-disclosure agreement and share some additional details. And he had this nagging concern as we sort of talked about it further. He realized, he's wondering if there'd be a culture mismatch because, they seem to be more cold outreach oriented. That's literally how they connected with him, whereas his focus is way more inbound. Was there going to be culture mismatch if they were out there cold pitching people? So it's a tough situation. I am sharing an additional article. Key thing, and this is for everyone, regardless of what you're doing for your own marketing, whether that's through more one-on-one outreach or something broader. It's a technique I call inbound branding, and it's 3 parts. So 1, specialize, focus on your target market, whatever that might be. Then use thought leadership marketing to share useful advice and content that people can benefit from. And here's the third thing, and this is the thing where a lot of people drop the ball. That third thing is marketing automation. When I launched my website in 2013 for what's now Sakas Company, the website had a contact page so people get in touch, a blog so that Google would start indexing things immediately, and an email opt-in from day one. Like I knew I needed an email opt-in, from day one. As one of my speaking coaches said, Alan Hoffler, the audience never loves you more than the moment you walk off the stage.
And that is still true. If you want to get in front of someone, when you are in front of someone, that is your opportunity. If they love what you're sharing, that's the chance to get them to opt in. Still true today. So I'm curious, as I said 3 years ago there in that video, LinkedIn outreach, you don't really want to be the recipient of it, but people are doing it, whether automated or otherwise. I'm curious if you're joining live, what is your experience, either as a recipient of LinkedIn messages? Have you ever gotten one that really resonated? And if you've tried it, how has it gone for you? But let's switch over to our next Q&A segment today. And this will be a conversation with my colleague, Kate, who is our producer and also the operations manager at Sakas & Company. So Kate, hello.
Hello.
So for this particular topic, we're going to come back. We're going to come back to revenue generation. But I wanted to pause to take a look at what does it look like to take time away from your agency, doing extended leave, usually on a planning ahead basis, but it could also be a surprise as well. And earlier this year, I took 4 weeks off. I did a 4-week sabbatical to celebrate 10 years of running what's now Sakas & Company. And actually added a company benefit so that every 5 years, employees can take a 4-week sabbatical. But of course, there's other leave as well. So here, we'll talk a bit about what we did to prepare for my leave earlier in 2023. And then, Kate, we can talk about things that you're doing to prepare for your leave. So anything, Kate, you'd add on that plan?
It takes a lot longer to prepare for leave than the leave itself. So even if you're not planning a leave right now, or even if it's just for upcoming vacation or upcoming holidays, these are all really good things to think about ahead of time so that you're not scrambling last minute as we head into the holiday season.
Yeah. With my sabbatical leave, we started planning some of that like 2 years in advance. The 2 years was figuring out, okay, when generally to do it, getting the dates blocked in, planning around other potential commitments that would be happening then. We weren't doing all of the prep 2 years in advance. But if you know, for instance, that you want to be out for, say, a milestone birthday or a milestone in running your agency, figure out the dates now. And you don't have to sort out everything you're going to do while you're away, but take the time to start planning when is it going to happen. So, Kate, from your perspective, as you and Diane were supporting me on my sabbatical, what were some of the things you were thinking about as we prepared?
One of the big things was every component that you do during the day, who's going to take on what responsibility and how are we going to manage those in a way that would make you satisfied with how we're handling it. So making sure that we understand your expectations for the role, making sure that we understand the outcomes that you want from us taking on the responsibilities. So making sure that that was really clear ahead of time and scheduling time all the way from pre-planning to your actual leave date, scheduling internal time to go over things and review things. And, oh, we hadn't thought about that. What happens if this scenario occurs? What do we do? What is our go-to move? What would Karl do in this case? So making sure that we really had your goal, your vision, resources, goals, VGR's mindset, so that we could make sure that we handled everything and you could actually take that leave without stressing that we had it covered.
And indeed, it was fully uninterrupted, which was a bit different from my experience 5 years ago, where I did a 3-week trip to focused on Australia, but also New Zealand and Abu Dhabi. And in that case, my colleague Diane had just joined. Tip, don't hire someone and then 2 weeks later leave for 3 weeks. So in that case, we were doing like a weekly call, like in the evening for me in Australia and in the morning for Diane. That worked. But in a sense, that was almost a stress test for things that we needed to sort out for the later leave. So, Kate, how about the prep you were doing for your upcoming leave?
I think the thing that I didn't expect to be as difficult was thinking about everything that I do in a day and then realizing, oh, I don't actually have a documentation for that. I just know how to do it. But if someone else were to come in and step into my shoes, they would need more description and more assistance in completing the task that I was completing. So making sure that the SOPs are really detailed, that I'm communicating with my team so that when they're reading the workflows, does it make sense to them? And making sure that everything that I'm doing has someone covering it, but I'm not overloading any one of my team members, making sure that it's evenly distributed. People feel confident in taking on those responsibilities, and prepping a lot earlier than you'd think.
Yes. We're also going to do some stress tests beforehand, where, for instance, Diane, who has served as producer for office hours before, but will step in and serve as producer before, Kate, you were away. So if there are any process things that we've added since before, we can sort that out. You're available to help, things like that. Also thinking about how to organize the documentation and so on. Now, for everyone listening, what if you're in a situation where, say, you go in for your annual physical or you go to the doctor because you've had some sort of problem symptoms and you find out you've got some sort of a health crisis and you need to stop working immediately? That's a lot harder, right? You can't plan 2 years in advance for that or months in advance for that. But I would say that the work you do now to make yourself increasingly optional if you've read my Work Less Earn More book, you know about the 4 stages of agency involvement day to day. You know, stage 1, you're mandatory. Stage 2, you go from mandatory to necessary. Then stage 3 is needed. And if you pursue, stage 4 is making yourself optional on a day-to-day basis. And you can be in more than one stage at once in different areas. But, you know, the more you take steps to make yourself optional, stage 4, or even needed, stage 3, the team can get more done without you. And so if you unfortunately have to leave unexpectedly, you're good to go. For instance, you know, in my case, as part of my prep, I added Diane as COO, as a signer on the bank accounts. The bank employee actually joked about Diane like taking the money and going to the Caribbean, which I thought was an interesting choice for them to joke about. Diane did not go to the Caribbean, or at least, well, I don't know. I wasn't there, but nothing bad happened. Kind of thing. I also knew that because the team was in the midst of making a hire while I was away, I did some paperwork pre-authorizing the team to make that hire, because normally it would have been me signing the agreement and things like that. Yeah, so before we move on to the next segment, Kate, anything else that you'd add to help people?
I think the biggest thing is just making sure that you have your documentation in place and making sure that it is easily readable and everybody can anyone could come in and understand it. Of course, nobody's going to do the job as well as you, but it's good to have that documentation in place for whenever you plan on your next vacation.
And as Diane, thanks for adding in chat, when you go and leave, you could do a test run of delegation, and you might even eventually make some of the delegation permanent. You know, as I'm supporting my coaching and consulting clients around their taking extended leave, usually things they offload, they usually do not take all of it back. If you've got a client that is like, oh, I only want to talk to you for everything. Well, if you're out for family leave, you know, in that case, yeah, they want to talk to you, but you're gone and all that. That's not an option. They may find that they like the new person as much as you. Maybe they like them more than you, or who knows? But ideally, some of the things that you get off your plate, you don't put back on your plate after all of it is over. All right, Kate, thank you for sharing. Appreciate your perspective.
Absolutely.
Coming up, we'll talk more about revenue generation, in particular, a way to get your sales pipeline moving when your clients and your prospective clients have been a little leery about spending money at the moment. We'll also talk about, making that happen. And then we'll take a look at pricing models. In particular, how do you make sure your pricing models are profitable? That'll be our final segment today. But first, a word from our sponsor, Sakas & Company. Hi, Karl Sakas here, agency advisor, helping agency owners work less and earn more, and helping create professional growth opportunities for agency employees so that they can grow in their career and grow their own compensation as well, while making life easier for the agency owners. What if there were a way to start getting comprehensive advice, comprehensive support to help your agency without the big commitment? Well, now there is. You can now buy the first phase 1 of my comprehensive consulting support without committing in advance to an entire larger project. You'll get quick wins, things you can implement immediately, as well as long-term priorities that will help you make things go better in the future. I just created a list of quick wins for a client who's doing phase 1 engagement, and there were over 25 potential quick wins that I identified, things that they can do, the leadership team can do over the next few months to make things better, as well as, of course, working on some longer-term priorities and strategies as well. You know, when you run an agency, it's less about what do you do and more about what do you do next. You get that, in the phase one offering. And I'm going to come up with a better name for it. This is new. It's not even on the website yet if you're watching this live in September of 2023. But if you are interested in this, if it sounds like something you'd like, quick wins, you'd like strategic recommendations without the commitment to a much larger project, you can do phase one. Go to sakasandcompany.com, go to the contact page, and say, I want to hear more about phase one. We'll get back to you. All right. Well, let's take a look now at, let's unpack what I just offered. A lot of agencies have shared that their clients want to commit to a smaller budget, or they're interested in starting, but maybe they don't want to start with a retainer. And what do? These are clients that are qualified, that need the agency's help. And how do you get things unstuck? Well, that inspired my creating the phase one approach that I just talked about, where the feedback I got was that people wanted comprehensive help, but they were a little leery about committing the full budget at this point, which makes sense. And I do have a bite-sized call option, which is a single call, but it's not comprehensive. So what is something in the middle? And that's where the phase one comes in. So, as you're thinking about this, what is a bite-size offering you could provide at your agency? Now, this could be paid discovery. It could be a paid discovery offering where you're doing some sort of analysis, some sort of review. Maybe you're making some recommendations, that kind of thing. But your offer, an agency head who previously ran a 100+ person agency, described it recently as a wedge offer in our conversation. What is something you can do to get started? Sometimes people call it the foot in the door offer. And it may be beyond paid discovery. Now, what's the right thing for you? Well, it needs to be portable. Clients need to be able to take that and use it on their own to get results. But ideally, it also leads itself to doing a phase two of some sort of further support from your agency. And I'm curious, if you're joining us live, go ahead and share in chat. What is your initial engagement for clients? One of the things that I realized, and this gets into packaging, there may be some things you're doing already that you could repackage as that particular offer. For instance, several years ago, I was heading to a speaking engagement. I stopped at a gas station to use the bathroom. And while I was waiting in line, I noticed they had a display with $1 over-the-counter medications. And, as I was waiting, I was looking at some of the packages. For instance, there was a pink package that said allergy relief, $1. And there was a blue package that said sleep aid, also $1. And as I was waiting, I took a closer look. And here's the thing. The allergy relief and the sleep aid, the exact same medication, generic Benadryl, but they packaged it in different ways, either as allergy relief and a slightly different dose as a sleep aid. What could you repackage that your agency is doing already, but that could be more of a phase one kind of stepping stone sort of offer? There's probably something you're doing already. So certainly in working with my team, we identified new ways to deliver things about phase one, but it wasn't totally new. I mean, in a sense, aspects of it are things that I've been doing for over a decade. So, as you think about this, what's right for you? I'm still making changes to the process. You don't have to get it totally right the first time. Be ready to make changes. I already found some new ideas to upgrade the process. You need to find what works for you and adjust accordingly. And if you have any questions on that, feel free to share in chat or raise your Zoom hand. If you're joining live, did anyone want to come on video and we can chat about it? I can share some advice to help your agency. Go ahead and raise your Zoom hand or say in chat, I volunteer. All right. Well, if that changes, feel free to raise your Zoom hand. All right. Let's take a look at pricing models. This is a question that came in from Sarah. She isn't able to join us live today, but I'm going to answer the question anyway because this is an important topic. To paraphrase, Sarah asked, what pricing model should we consider to secure strong profit margins at our agency? Well, as a starting point, let's look at the pricing model options, and then we can take a look at profitability for them. So there are 3 agency pricing models: hourly or time and materials, milestone or deliverable based, which could be on a project basis or a retainer basis, where people have committed, they'll pay you a certain amount of money if you do a certain amount of work. And then the third model is value-based pricing. And this tends to get approached a few different ways. A lot of times people will call it value-based, but it's really what I would say is value anchored around the value. If we're talking about true value-based pricing, that's where you get paid based on the performance of your work. That tends to be most prominent in things like pay-per-click work, affiliate marketing, sometimes other cases as well. Say you're doing a particular campaign of some sort, and you get paid based on the success of the campaign. So if we think about the 3 models, hourly, milestone, and value-based, is one of them necessarily more profitable than the others? Well, a lot of it comes down to your delivery. For instance, the benefit of hourly or time and materials is that you get paid for every hour you work. When I worked as a project manager at a time and materials agency, part of my job every Friday was to review everyone's time tracking and make sure that things were accurate. For instance, we rounded up to the next quarter hour. So if someone hadn't already done that, I would update that, making sure that anything that should have been billable was marked as billable. Sometimes people accidentally marked it as non-billable, or maybe they thought it shouldn't be billable, but say it was research for a particular client. Well, that's billable. And so I would update that. So when it was time at month end to do the invoicing based on time and materials, I had already front loaded a lot of the work. So that is the benefit, profit-wise, of time and materials, which is you get paid for every single hour you work, as long as everyone is logging their time accurately. The downside, of course, is, you could give a client a brilliant insight and it takes you an hour and you charge them whatever your hourly rate is, 200, 250, 300, maybe as the owner, you're charging $500 an hour for your time. And the client could go off and make millions of dollars. I mean, they're going to have to do some implementation. It was the advice alone doesn't do it, kind of thing. But, that can be a problem. And that's where milestone or deliverable based comes in, where the faster you are at getting things done and at fulfilling the work, in theory, the more money you can make. If you priced the milestone based on assuming, say, it was 10 hours of work and then you can get it done in 8, well, you made some extra money. If you can get it done in 2, even more so. The downside, of course, is that if you're doing milestone pricing, you are committing to deliver the work for whatever the scope you've agreed to for that price, no matter how long it takes. And so if you're bad at scoping, or someone is just making up a price without thinking about the work involved and not involving your project managers, you could get burned. For instance, I was scoping something on a time and materials basis, but scoping something for an overall estimate. The project budget in the end was $300,000 just for development, not even the strategy, information architecture, and visual design, just development, $300,000. The budget eventually grew to $500,000. But there was a particular feature we were doing where a client wanted something that was custom. We hadn't done it before, but one of our freelancers had. So I talked to them about scoping, and they said it'll take 40 hours to get it done. But I knew there could be variation. And I said, well, what if, what's the best case? Like if it's faster, and what's the worst case if things take a lot longer? And they thought about it and they said, best case, instead of 40, we might be able to get it done in 20 hours. Worst case, if everything turns out to be a lot worse, they were like, 80 hours. 20 versus 80 hours. That is a big variation. And you may not always see that, but even if you're looking at a smaller individual task, it all adds up. So, milestone is good if you're good at estimating and you're more efficient. Time and materials could be a good starting point the first time you do something. For instance, the phase 1 offer that I mentioned is a flat fee. It's a milestone basis. But if I had never done it before, I don't know. I might consider time and materials, but you have to decide what's right for you. Now, what about value-based? Well, value-based is great if you've combined the payout, your payment, with the success of whatever you're doing for the client. I mean, the good news there is that ultimately, the more they make, the more you make. But that also means that if you do something that doesn't work, well, that's a problem. And you might not get paid what you would have gotten on a milestone basis or otherwise. And so ultimately, you have to get it right. And also, if you do something on a pure value basis and you're not paid until it works, you could find yourself putting dozens or hundreds of extra hours into things, because it could be all or nothing. Now, ideally, you're getting some sort of milestone baseline amount, but it's kind of like, say, if you're hiring a realtor, and you've listed your house, they get their commission if things work, and all. But if you don't sell the house, they don't get anything, no matter how much time they've put in, and things like that. So that can be a frustrating situation. I would not do value-based pricing for someone, for work you've never done before, or really for a client you've never worked with before, because someone might have a lot of potential, but say if they have they're into taking some ethical shortcuts, they might try to cut you out of the money that you've earned, and they try to shortchange you. So that's not a good situation. I'm curious, Diane and Kate, what would you add about pricing or about scoping? Is there anything that comes to mind from your perspective?
I think you've covered a lot of it, Karl, but the one thing that I always find somewhat shocking when, in my previous life running agencies and, talking with a lot of different agency owners and peers, is that they don't really have down the basics of knowing what things cost. I mean, there's oh yeah, we should do that. And you've spoken a lot about making sure that things are aligned. And it's a lot of work.
Yes.
But you need somebody who is, keeping an eye on both the productivity and, the time to delivery, and that things are being delegated to the least, how do you put it, the most competent, least expensive person. Because you will find that, let's say that you're not necessarily at the client services director level, but your account director isn't particularly busy. Well, they may go insert themselves into a project and start doing some PM work or some other work, and all of a sudden you're only able to charge the rate that would have been for the actual person who should have been working on it.
Yes.
But by virtue of the fact that they've got a more senior person working on the project, they're getting far more valuable advice.
Yes.
Well, that's a flag to, hey, next time we need to maybe add in some hours into a project. Or, they found the person who jumped in found all of these great ideas and great strategies, and they were given away for free. How do you go about incorporating that into future scopes to take advantage of that incremental income?
And in the meantime, of course, making sure to frame it as strategically free. For instance, a friend works at a large consulting firm, and he mentioned that They had various senior people that were between projects and there was work to do, where normally a mid-level person would be working on the engagement, and the firm put the senior people on. However, the company was not framing it as strategically free or strategically discounted. In this case, they were paying just at a lower rate. And the problem he mentioned was that everyone wanted to get the senior people next time at the mid price. You know, if you're going to do something like that, if that's just what you need to do, make sure you frame it to clients as strategically free or strategically discounted. We'll share the article on that. For instance, maybe when you're invoicing the client, if it's time and materials, have a line item for the discount every single time. You know, for instance, senior rate, and then a discount on every invoice referencing special one-time discount, getting senior help at, you know, intermediate price, things like that. And you could do a version of that on a milestone basis, even if you're just calling it out. That's helpful. For value-based,
There's a flip side of it too, and that is if you have a good handle on, you know, how everyone's time is allocated and who's available for things, and you're looking at a project where you'd have to hire an outside freelancer and you've got people who are idle, you
yes,
have the opportunity to make the decision, all right, is this a break-even situation on the labor if I use in-house versus, you know, going out and hiring a freelancer to complete this? Or, you know, what projects from an internal perspective? I mean, we heard earlier the question about how do I, you know, get new clients and how do I have the right pricing? And
yeah.
it's cobbler's children on your own marketing. I mean, are there things that need to get done during this time where you've got people who maybe they're not necessarily raising their hand for more work, but they have capacity.
Exactly. And ideally, someone at the agency, and this is for everyone listening, whether live or on the recording, ideally, someone is in charge of resourcing at your agency. It could be your senior most project manager, it could be an operations manager. You might have someone who only does resourcing if you're running a larger agency. Could be you as the owner if you have a lower headcount. Someone needs to be thinking about what is the best way to deploy people at the agency. There's a book recommendation, a book called The Outsiders, about 8 unconventional CEOs and how they approach leading their business. Now, these were not agency owners. There are some names you might recognize, others you might not. The key thing was that these were 8 CEOs who outperformed their industry during the time that they were in charge of their company. And the key takeaway for me from the book, and if you've read it, would love to hear what's stood out for you. The key takeaway is this: the outperformer CEOs hired someone to handle operations. They had a strong COO or deputy or other person in charge of day to day. And then the CEO focused on allocation, resource allocation, specifically capital allocation. That's financial capital and human capital. Human capital deploying the right people for the right roles, and also deploying on the financial side, where does the money make the most sense? I saw an interview recently with the current CEO of Uber, and the interviewer asked him about what does he look for when he's hiring people. And one of the things he mentioned was their ability to develop people. That is to help their direct reports grow. And that makes a lot of sense. The point there in the article, the interview was basically the people you hire are going to do certain things, but they're also getting the people who report to them to do certain things. And you want them helping build the agency rather than maybe be rowing in a different direction, as it were. Well, Diane, thank you for sharing. Is there anything else you'd add before we wrap up today?
I think we've got a good foundation for folks to move forward.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. So That concludes Agency Office Hours for September of 2023. If you have a question you'd like me to answer free of charge here on Zoom in a future call, include your question when you RSVP. Kate, Diane, and I will let you know if you're on the list beforehand, and then you'll get 10, 15 minutes of free consulting advice. We're meeting every second Tuesday, and you can also access the library of years of past events with ultimately hundreds of Q&A segments, and we've updated things. You can actually click to go directly to a particular segment about the topic you're interested in, whether it's about business development, whether it's about operations, whether it's about hiring people, building partnerships, and more. I'm Karl Sakas. Thank you so much for joining Agency Office Hours. I look forward to seeing you at a future event. If you'd like my help on something, please go to sakasandcompany.com, reach out, and we can recommend options. In the meantime, thank you and good luck out there.